The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 69.
Nice.
Recorded on Friday, July 29th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we watched the Wisconsin Republican gubernatorial primary debate. I heard that. So you don't have to. But first, the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
First up in headlines, it's been kind of a crazy week for Congress. There's been a lot moving around. We talked about last week. Joe Manchin had decided to not support the budget reconciliation bill that he himself helped create.
Yep.
Which seemed kind of crazy.
And kind of like real dick move-ish, you know?
And one of the major provisions in that bill was climate change funding. And that actually prompted a sit-in in Chuck Schumer's office by congressional staffers.
Yep.
Including the head of the union for those staffers, who 6 of them got arrested in Chuck Schumer's office, protesting because they're all younger. Unlike Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and most of Congress, they will be alive in 50 years when a lot of the implications of a warming planet will be evident.
So what happened?
Well, in an interesting development...
I'm ready for the good news. Come on. I'm ready. I've been waiting for this.
Joe Manchin changed his mind again and will now support the budget reconciliation.
And why did he do that?
So the story, which is kind of crazy, that Democrats actually figured out how to play politics. It's the first time I can remember.
Are you telling me Democrats are in array? You get it? Because it's like Democrats in disarray, you know, but now they're in array.
That was not evident.
Man, whatever.
But they actually
They did something right. They actually learned how to play politics and do political hardball for the first time in my entire freaking life.
They actually were able to outmaneuver Mitch McConnell. So the story goes that...
So yeah, let's start with the CHIPS Act.
The CHIPS Act, which is the basically corporate welfare act for semiconductor manufacturers, including Intel, Micron, Texas Instruments, basically giving them $52 billion to build plants here in the United States. You know, they used to have plants here in the United States, and then they shipped jobs overseas to make more money.
So we'll beg them to give
so
more jobs
now
back here.
The government has to give them billions of dollars to come back with no strings attached, no guarantees that they'll actually build the plants here, no guarantees that they'll actually hire employees, none of that. But of course, it's a very important bill that we have to do. It has to deal with national security, Joe, because we can't get enough microchips, even though it's not going to help with the current semiconductor shortage because you can't build a semiconductor plant in a week.
Enough. Yeah.
It's going to take years for this to actually do anything. But
it's something.
Republicans had said that they were going to hold this bill hostage if Joe Manchin agreed with Democrats on budget reconciliation, the bill that he himself helped create. So, the CHIPS Act passed, and then, oddly, a couple hours later, an announcement was made that Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer had reached an agreement on budget reconciliation, including the climate provisions that was apparently the sticking point with Joe Manchin. There's also some talk that it was a former U.S. Treasury Secretary that had basically convinced Joe Manchin that this bill would not lead to more inflation.
Right. So it almost didn't happen. It took a lot of schmoozing, at least.
So the Republicans lost. Not only did they vote for the CHIPS Act,
now we get the Inflation Reduction Act instead.
Yes.
Well, as well.
I can't believe they're calling it that.
I know. So tell us a little bit about what's in this bill.
Okay, so the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, grown, and they're calling it inflation reduction because it will potentially have a budget surplus. They're not spending as much as this bill should potentially create, which then that money should go back to pay off the deficit, our very real and important deficit that we totally owe the money to ourselves. But because of that, that's how it's fighting inflation, by the way. It's the only reason that they put that in there. But it is, I'll say for the positives, it is the largest climate and carbon reduction legislation in U.S. history.
It is.
We're spending $370 billion over 10 years, although the bill is set to generate $700 billion in revenue revenue in those 10 years as well.
That's
so technically not spending anything.
Well, that's fantastic, though.
If all of that math works out. I would rather they spend the rest of that money as well and not throw it into the giant pit of the deficit, but whatever. It includes an extension to the Affordable Care Act benefits. It creates a corporate minimum tax rate of 15%, which I wrote, I do not understand this, because I tried to look into it, like what that means, and I am not an accountant, or I'm not good at the maths, and that all went a little over my head. I thought the corporate tax rate was supposed to be 21%. It was reduced from 35% by Donald Trump, but I mean, as we know, corporations don't pay that much. I certainly understand that much.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly what the corporate minimum tax rate is going to do. It also closes the carried interest loophole, which I also don't know anything about. But the climate provisions, a little bit more detail there. It's supposed to lower energy costs, increase cleaner production, and reduce carbon emissions by roughly 40%, which I think is bringing us back down to the 2005 levels by 2030.
Okay.
That's what they say. Doesn't really give you any more detail than that, but that's what it says.
Well, because they're just goals at the end of the day, so who knows?
And one of the bigger things is it allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices and caps out-of-pocket costs to $2,000, which is
That's huge.
an actual progressive
Yeah.
legislation that has been trying to get passed forever.
Right.
It does not include the insulin protection, but I heard that they were going to include that before it passes.
Okay.
So, and that would cap insulin at $35 for those with insurance, which, I mean, it's not perfect. I would rather see that cap for everyone, not just those with insurance.
Well, at least it's a step in the
But,
right direction.
yeah, it's at least something, and will prevent people from having to pay hundreds of dollars for their insulin.
Even with insurance.
And of course, Joe Manchin's daughter runs a pharmaceutical company, which jacked up the prices of EpiPens, as we all know.
She did, yeah.
So
Now, my big concern, though, when I saw more information about this reconciliation bill, is that Joe Manchin may be on. I'm not going to celebrate until I see the thing pass.
Right. Don't spike the ball before you get in the end zone.
Right. But my big concern is that I heard that Kirsten Sinema is not a yes yet. She's still on the fence.
And I could see this as like she's kind of been pushed in the background for Joe Manchin for a while, that maybe now she takes her Cruella de Vil stand on this one.
Well, I mean, the big thing would be the drug prices, because she already vocalized her opposition to that before.
Yeah, which is the dumbest thing. It's the best thing for the American people right now that's in this bill.
But it's because some of her biggest donors are pharmaceutical lobbies. That's why.
And she is, unlike Joe Manchin, who, if he gets replaced, it's going to be with a Republican, so there's not much you can really do there.
But with her, it's Arizona.
Right. She could easily be replaced with a much better... And when she got into office, she ran as like a Green Party candidate in the first place. So she was much more to the left than she is currently, positioning herself as a conservative, centrist, however you want to put it.
I don't know what she's doing. But at least as of right now, there's some hope. And that's the good thing about this, where we just have something good to look forward to with this very bleak nightmare of a Biden administration that we could even have as Democrats.
And it angered Republicans so much
that they attacked veterans.
The PACT Act, which is all about providing enhanced medical benefits for veterans. That's everything in the bill, is all dealing with veterans who have been in contact with toxic chemicals and fumes. It's so mainly there to help veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan that had damage to their lungs by being exposed to the burn pits. Because apparently that's the way our military gets rid of their trash, is they throw it in a big pile and burn it, even if it's plastic, chemicals, whatever, it doesn't matter. It all goes, it's not in America, so who cares? Throw it all in a pit in the sand and burn it, and then have all of our military veterans
sit there and watch it until they get cancer.
And breathe it in. Yeah, and get cancer. And it also includes provisions for Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange. It is the biggest slam dunk.
Like, no bill you can ever think of.
Right, it's taking care of our veterans. We're all supposed to care for the veterans, right? They're basically under our charge. The people that get sent off to war in our name
are taken care of.
We're responsible for them.
So this was originally looked at and passed in the Senate back in June, if I remember correctly. I think it was
86-14?
Yeah, I believe so. Or 85-14. I think maybe one didn't vote. But yes, it was overwhelmingly bipartisan. It was perfect. That's not what happened this time.
Because the Republicans are upset
that
because
they got outmaneuvered.
with the budget reconciliation announcement, they decided to tank the next vote that came up, which happened to be this PACT Act. Republicans, who are champions of the military,
Of our
they have
veterans.
all of the veteran group support. They're constantly literally hugging flags, talking about how much they love the military, and they constantly push for more military spending, more military spending, more military spending. You know, all of that money goes to defense contractors and giant corporations. But when it comes to actually giving money to the veterans, to people, and not donors, and waging money to wage war across the world, they can't support it.
Nope. So 41 Republicans voted against the PACT Act in the Senate. 25 of those flipped their vote, who were previously yes votes back in June, to now no's.
And the reason why it had to be voted on again is because there were some changes when it went to the House.
Yes.
And then whenever that happens, it always has to go back to the Senate
again.
And really, the changes were extremely
It was
minor.
super minor.
It had to do with wording on like funding for rural hospitals.
Yes.
Is literally all it was. Other than that, there were no changes.
No, not at all. And our Senator, Ron Johnson, was one of those 25 Republicans. Because, of course. And we'll talk about him in a little bit, too.
And this, I don't know if you saw any of the video, I'm sure you did, from Jon Stewart.
I was just going to bring it up,
He
too.
was on fire.
Well, so I saw him, obviously, we'll link the article, and it has him just on a tirade outside of the Senate, just bashing Republicans.
Yeah,
needlessly.
MF'd them, yeah, all sorts of stuff. It was,
Well, I specifically loved how he like literally gestured over to a veteran that was like to his right, and then said they sat in McConnell's office, and McConnell. And he literally, you just have to watch it because he like tries to do an imitation of McConnell too. It's like, and these guys sat in McConnell's office and McConnell and looked him right in the eye and said, yeah, we'll get it done. It was amazing. I highly recommend it. I also saw him.
He was on Fox News.
On Fox News.
He was on Newsmax. He was everywhere.
Yeah, he went on a crusade. It was so good because, and I'm glad that he did that too, because at least in Fox News's segment, they tried to defend Pat Toomey because he tried to say, well, there's more pork in the bill. There's, all this Democrat. If you're going to blame anybody, blame the Democrats.
Right. It's the Democrats' fault.
And Jon Stewart on his phone in like his truck outside of Congress is just like, nope, BS. I hate it. Nothing changed at all. Go call him out on it. If you're actually a news source, go call him out on it.
And he said, go look at congress.gov.
Yeah.
Read the bill yourself. The Republicans' big thing that they were pushing is the way money gets allocated. Well, it gets allocated by Congress. So they would have to vote on it anyway.
Yes.
So their objection was nonsensical, which, I mean, does that surprise anybody?
This was the stupidest thing they could have done.
Yeah, they basically were just lashing out because they were upset with the other announcement and the fact that it came right after the CHIPS bill passed.
Yeah.
And they were excited and happy afterwards. After denying money to help dying veterans, they were high-fiving and fist-bumping.
Yeah. Now that's going around too on Twitter. In all aspects, they just screwed up royally, and they looked like the most villainous people you can imagine.
They look like who they are.
I mean, yes.
The people that put...
But now normal people can see it, though. That's the problem for them.
Right. They are just in it for power, and they put their own aspirations for that power and their control over the government ahead of the veterans that they constantly talk about how much they love.
Exactly.
And now maybe people can start to understand. When Republicans talk about loving the military, they love war and they love defense contractors. They couldn't care less about veterans.
Nope, not at all.
And it's something that we've said over and over and over again. I hate the military. I hate that we wage war everywhere. I don't want anyone to get disabled or die when they go into the military. I think we should have free healthcare for life. I think we should have free healthcare for life for everyone, but at the very minimum,
for the
we
military
should have free
veterans.
healthcare as soon as you enlist and you honorable discharge, whatever, you get healthcare for life. That should, to me, that's the stupidest, easiest thing that we should do. You should get free education, free healthcare, whatever you need for life.
Yep.
Done. Who would say no to that? Republicans. That's too much bloat. We can spend $1 trillion a year on defense spending, but we can't spend $5 million to give veterans health care.
Nope.
That shows you who they really are. They are in love with war and with missiles and hardware, not with veterans. They don't care who's flying the plane, who's driving the tank. They just want more planes, more tanks. We can sell that stuff to other countries. That's what we do as a military. It's all just a show so that we can sell the military hardware around the world and make billions and billions of dollars, and then all that money goes to the defense contractors. And then those senators, after they leave the Senate, will go work for those defense contractors and make 7 figures. But that's the way our system is. And again, who loses? The poor kid who's, at 18 years old gets convinced to go sign up at the recruiter's office and thinks he's, his country's got his back as he's going to go and serve. And he gets home and gets cancer because he was stationed next to a burn pit. And then the government tells him, sorry, too bad. We can't afford to give you treatment.
Yep.
Pay for it yourself or die. Sorry, get the same deal as everyone else.
And in SCOTUS rulings have consequences news, there was a recent Washington Post article talking about how after the recent ruling from the Supreme Court about the Bremerton case, if you guys don't remember that was the football coach who was praying on the field. Actors are currently trying to push prayer back into schools as we speak. And when I say this, we already knew that there was backlash back from the Bremerton case ruling saying that people were overreacting. In reality, this was a narrow ruling. Nothing's actually happening or going to happen with prayer in school. Well, in several states already, that's already being reconsidered. You have states like Illinois, Alabama, Florida are now already reconsidering their school policies to make prayer more accessible for teachers in the classroom. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Bill DeFrance. He's the superintendent of Eaton Rapids Public Schools in Michigan. He's also a soccer coach for one of the schools on the side. He was quoted in the article saying, if the Michigan Department of Education or the Michigan High School Athletic Association said they like to work about how you can incorporate prayer into sports events for kids, I'd certainly take it to the school board and say, we could help pilot this. We could try this. He goes on to say, and I quote, I could see some real interesting things like, okay, Bill, you're a Hindu. You lead prayer for this week and give some background on why Hindus pray.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be very open
Bill.
Bill the Hindu.
Lead us in prayer, Bill in Michigan, who's a Hindu. It's the lack of awareness is absolutely astonishing. And when we talk about how people are so ignorant of what is going on, they're going to try this anyway. This is what we're talking about. They have no clue about what the Constitution says, and they'll do whatever they can to try to get around it because that's what they just want to do. And some may be saying, okay, but maybe we'll have school prayer now, or we'll have prayer on the football field or whatever. Except we already know that's not true because they want to explicitly impose Christian prayer and no one else's. Take, for example, also from the same article, Christy Fraga, who is a Florida state rep. She pushed a bill last year that required schools to hold a, quote, moment of silence each day, which was later signed into law by Governor DeSantis. So keep that in mind. We are already in a year of Florida having a mandatory moment of silence in every school. And even though it did not explicitly call for school prayer, the text of the bill itself was riddled with language about studying the Bible and finding God again. And even DeSantis, while he was signing, saying that God cannot be pushed out of our public schools.
I thought he was all powerful. Like, if you were omnipotent, you could just do whatever you wanted, right? Like, oh, good, the government, stop bullying our all-powerful Lord. Stop pushing him out.
Nothing.
You're so mean. You're so strong. I can't believe it.
When you think God is all powerful, nothing is as powerful as a school administrator, especially an atheist one.
Bullying poor Jesus.
Yeah.
He was already crucified. Leave Jesus alone.
But Fraga came back and was quoted in this article saying, after the ruling, I would love to see there be the ability to implement more religious teachings. There's lessons that are taught right now in school that maybe certain families do not believe in. You want to guess what those things are, Jason?
That slavery was a bad thing?
Or how about that LGBTQ people exist? Or how about evolution? Actual evidence-based practice stuff, right? She goes on to say, and students have to sit there and listen to what history has brought us to, like learning has brought us to. Why not also offer lessons on Christianity, the religion that has formed our nation, as well as the different types of other religions?
I like I'm not even going to bother saying any of the other ones, just those other heathen pagan religions.
In her own statement, she basically admits that there will not be any equality if you bring religion into the classroom at all.
It's going to be Christianity.
It's going to be Christianity.
Christianity and other.
Right. So poor Bill, the Hindu in Michigan, is going to feel super pressured because not only does he feel different than all the other kids, but now he's going to get up in front of all of them and tell them, by the way, I'm in a religion that thinks you're all wrong.
Shut up about your dumb elephant god, Bill. Nobody cares.
This stuff is insane. And the fact that it's happening should show you again why you should care about the Supreme Court.
And why we had separation of church and state to begin with. You can pray at home all you'd like. No one's going to stop you. You don't need your kid being forced to pray in school.
Well, and I'm just getting ready for more teachers to actually just explicitly lead students in prayer now. Again.
Well, and the other thing is, there's wildly different versions of Christianity, too. And you know it's mostly the evangelicals pushing all this.
Well, of course.
So what's going to happen when there's somebody who's Catholic and they lead them in a Catholic prayer? It's going to be, the Pope is the Antichrist. We can't have this. And it's going to spark an even bigger controversy. It makes much more sense to just say none of it.
One of my favorite bits of U.S. history is, do you know who initially stood up for being able to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools? It was Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right, because they don't believe in any government service.
Other than religious.
Right, so they wouldn't want to have this performative act and to pledge allegiance to any government because they believe that religion is over government.
Right, and that's the thing, is that there are lots of Christian sects out there. There are Christian sects that don't believe in patriotism and things like that. They don't believe in birthdays. They don't believe in Christmas. Like, so if we're going to have
no holidays, yeah.
Well, but there are several that don't believe specifically in Christmas either. They think that it's a pagan religion. It is. But
Catholic Church didn't believe in Christmas for like the first 1,500 years.
Well, right. So I don't know where this is going to go, but the fact that the Supreme Court just arbitrarily opened Pandora's box upon us, oh my God, it infuriates me.
It's a very ignorant, like, they definitely think that they're pushing for just their religion.
Well, it's because a large majority of the Supreme Court is Catholic.
Right, like conservative Catholic.
Yeah, we need that cool Milwaukee Catholic. And an update on Brittany Griner.
From a couple episodes ago, the U.S. has now said that it has offered to trade imprisoned arms smuggler Victor Boot for both Griner and Paul Whelan, who we talked about in that episode as being...
I was just going to say, if you want to hear more about any of those people, listen back to our Brittany Griner episode. Hey, I saw you. You know, I don't really
I saw you, too.
I don't usually check our Twitter, but you got into someone with Brittany Griner.
It was, and I hardly ever use Twitter. I would almost never reply to anyone, but I saw, like, when you posted the episode.
Yeah.
And, like, it immediately was like, oh, she's not been wrongfully detained. And I was like, listen, Goob, it's an actual official designation. So, yes.
Nah, she hates America.
And
she didn't stand for the national anthem.
Right. And I was like, okay, so...
That's where you're coming from.
Yeah, now I know what the real problem is here. I hardly ever use Twitter, and
I just saw it and I thought it was really funny.
I would almost never get into that kind of argument with somebody, but I noticed that, like, literally that's all they had been doing. Like, I looked at their history, and they've only been commenting on Brittany Griner's stories, saying that she deserves it, like, over and over and over again.
Anyway, back to the real world.
So Russia has responded to those reports by saying they want to keep the negotiations private, and it seems that the reason the State Department went public with that offer is that they had not gotten a response yet from Russia, so they wanted to kind of pressure them into at least responding. Also, in this story, Brittany Griner's trial has been continuing, and she testified the other day. She testified that she was not given her rights when she was arrested, as is Russian law, and was not provided an interpreter when she signed documents. So she has really no idea what she even signed. She said she tried her best using Google Translate on her phone. And now, I don't know if you ever tried to use Google Translate, especially on an alphabet that is not the same as the language you're translating to, doesn't go so well. So I can imagine that she had a very hard time trying to do that. So hopefully this is over quickly. Hopefully everything works out, and both Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan will be home soon as possible.
And finally, we have some updates on the Democratic Senate race in Wisconsin. Several major candidates have now dropped out, including Alex Lasry, Sarah Godlewski, and Tom Nelson, leaving one candidate to take the helm, and the one true leader who will beat Ron Johnson.
So yeah,
Peter Pekarsky is the best one. Sorry. I mean
There's-
Mandela Barnes.
There are some fringe candidates that are still out there, but
Did you know Peter Pekarski chased me and a buddy out of a banquet hall trying to give us yard signs?
oh,
We had to like almost shut him in our door because he wouldn't get out of our car door.
no, I don't want your crap. Thank you. You throw it away yourself. Yeah, I don't know. Some people when they run, I'm not sure exactly. I think they're just trying to get their name out there so that they can run for like smaller.
I have no idea what he's doing, but
Yeah, I
but
don't know.
anyway, he's not worried of anything.
Right. So it's going to be Mandela Barnes versus Ron Johnson.
It will be
in November. If you were looking forward to a big primary night,
You
of
got nothing now.
yeah, to see who was going to win the nomination between Lasry and Barnes, which is really the two that were.
Well, Lasry was Barnes' only actual opponent.
Right.
I think you had Barnes leading Lasry by like 10 or 12 points, and then Sarah Godlewski was the next one like at 8 points,
Right.
like of the whole thing, and then Tom Nelson was like at 5 or
Right.
6, something like that.
Tom Nelson's a good candidate. He's just not very well known, comes from a smaller community.
Right.
Doesn't really have the recognition in either Madison or Milwaukee that you need.
Right. And I will also say that all 3 candidates that dropped out did endorse Mandela right away. And my guess is that Mandela's campaign did something to convince them to drop out immediately. And there's been some debate in Wisconsin Dem circles, which is like, well, why did they all drop out 2 weeks before the primary election? Why did they not just leave it up to voters? They're taking the choice away from voters, right? And I fully understand that. I respect that. Coming from a campaign side myself, I can also see if the actual goal was to defeat Ron Johnson, you need to coalesce. And having lots of people throw in hundreds of thousands, if not a couple of $1 million into like a GOT or get out the vote campaign in 2 weeks for a couple of failed campaigns that were never going to win anyway, that would just be throwing money into a fire pit. You might as well drop out, put all your money in one basket, and then just give it the best shot you got.
Well, I can tell you the way I'd heard it is that Sarah Godlewski had basically stopped campaigning for like a month, and most of her support as she was dropping in the polls was going towards Mandela Barnes. And Alex Lasry basically took that as a sign that he had no chance.
Yeah.
That he saw Godlewski is much more of a moderate, like much closer to Alex Lasry in platform, but being the son of a billionaire who's from New York and is only here because his dad bought the Bucks, most people expected him to end up a little bit more centrist than what he was running, or at least I did.
I did too, to be honest.
So I think he saw that, like, okay, if the people that were willing to back the much more standard Democrat Sarah Godlewski, she already holds statewide office as the treasurer, if they're not willing to back me and they're immediately going to Barnes and he's already up by
then there's
double
no shot.
digits in the polls, then it's essentially over.
Right.
He was the biggest surprise. The other two, Nelson and Godlewski, really had no chance. But yes, the race seemed to be between Barnes and Lasry, and Barnes was heavily expected to win. So I don't know that you're really like upsetting the apple cart by like everyone dropping out.
I don't think so.
Interesting that it happened, but I think Barnes was going to win anyway. And like, why waste your money? Especially Sarah Godlewski and Alex Lasry are mostly self-funding their own campaigns. Why waste your own money?
Godlewski spent, I think it was $450,000 into her own campaign, and I think Lasry put in several million.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Like, do you want to keep burning your own money? Or
probably not. So the Wisconsin Senate campaign is basically over, but we have some other campaigns we still need to talk about. So we're going to go on to the main segment and talk about the Republican gubernatorial primary. Let's do it.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
So, Joe, I have never been more upset at you suggesting we watch something for this podcast than I was this week.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was only an hour, Jason. That's all it was.
I watched it at 1.5 speed, and I started it on Tuesday. I didn't finish it until Friday.
Oh, it's the same thing. I did the same thing. I'm so sorry. So we watched the TMJ4 2022 GOP gubernatorial primary debate. We were also going to watch lieutenant governor debate, and after watching this, we were like, nah.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't even
do
take it.
We couldn't do it. And so
I had even suggested, well, maybe we can listen to the radio debate they did. Yeah,
I know.
No, this was plenty.
Oh my goodness. So they talked about several different topics that we'll kind of go through. This is going to be like a casual recap conversation. I just want to.
This is the state of the Republican Party in Wisconsin.
So the topics they covered was Wisconsin's $5.4 billion surplus, accepting federal aid, leadership, jobs, education, healthcare disparity, abortion and family leave, and of course the 2020 election.
Why don't you give us the three candidates?
So the three candidates that made the debate, and there are more that didn't make it, obviously, that are still going to be on the ballot, are Rebecca Clayfish, former lieutenant governor of Scott Walker's campaign. We had a whole episode about her a long time ago. You should go look it up if you want to see how crazy she was back then, too.
What were your overall thoughts of Rebecca in this debate?
She was stupid. She was really stupid. And what I mean by that, I know debates for like politics suck. They do nothing. The people who are in debates usually say absolutely nothing, usually of value. That happens in Democratic debates. That happens in Republican debates. I understand that. But even knowing that, Rebecca Clayfish was so dumb in this. And the worst part is that she wasn't the worst.
I honestly thought she did the best of the three. I think she actually seemed like a politician.
She did. She was the most politician-esque.
Like, it sounded like somebody that is comfortable in front of a camera.
Yes.
And was trying to work the crowd.
Although her eye was twitching a lot. Did you see that?
No, I missed that. Maybe at 1.5 speed, it didn't really stick out. I don't know. But, I mean, everything she said was horrible. And she said a lot of lies. She is trying to push herself as the more reasonable non-Trump candidate, which she
is now. She has no choice now
because she lost Trump's endorsement.
Right.
She has Pence's endorsement, so she has to be part of that team of the Mitt Romneys of the world. So she has to do that. Although she did slip back and forth a couple times, but we'll get into that when we talk about the actual debate. Now, what did you think of Tim Michels?
I thought he was the worst. So for those who don't remember, Tim Michels, I think we talked about him like briefly in a headline a couple episodes ago. He is the construction worker, businessman who has properties, I think was in Connecticut, I want to say it was, and just happens to also be here for sometimes, and now he wants to run for
He was
governor.
born here, to be fair.
He was born here. But he's the guy that is like super crazy. He says like, we don't want any money going to illegals, and I'm going to construct the border wall as governor or something. I don't know. He's just trying to be a hardcore MAGA candidate, and he is Trump's endorsed pick. He was terrible.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I agree. I think he did the worst.
He was so nervous.
He was, I don't know if it was sweat, if it was
There was
snot.
something.
Yeah.
There was something on his lip.
It was super shiny.
Oh
and
my
It was
God.
reflecting all of the stage lights.
Like, do you remember?
And it was so distracting. It reminded me of the Nixon-Kennedy debate.
Oh, that's exactly why he's a modern. The only other comparison I can think of was, do you remember Tom Steyer in the debates where he was just like staring hard at the camera? He would not blink. That's exactly what I thought Tim Michels was doing. He could not handle it. And he was so bad at answering any question. He had no clue how to answer anything.
I have, out of everyone, I have the least notes for him because he said almost nothing.
He said literally nothing.
And he never answered the question.
No.
He just had like whatever prepared statement. And there were multiple times where they kept like saying, you didn't answer the question. What about this? And he would not do it.
Jason, I don't even think they were prepared statements. I think he literally was winging it, man. I do not know. I do also remember like in the greetings, Rebecca Clayfish did take a shot at Tim Michels. I don't know if you saw that. So basically, I'm kind of spoiling, but the third guy is Representative Tim Ranthune. And basically when it was Rebecca's opening statement, she said, Tim, mentioning Tim Ranthune, it's nice to see you again. And Tim, looking at Tim Michels, I'm glad you were at least able to show up. And
he had missed a previous debate.
It was a dig because he missed other stuff. So man, I don't know what he's doing. He did not deserve deserve to be up there. He was an absolute mess. Good God.
I definitely think it will hurt his chances if anyone watched it and they weren't sure who they were going to support. So let's talk about the other Tim, the third candidate.
Tim Ranthun. So Tim Ranthun is the Let There Be Light, Stop the Steal candidate. He is a current state representative, and he is crazy.
I feel bad for the area he represents. 'Cause, oh my God.
Good absolute Lord. I'm going to give you a hot take. Are you ready for my hot take?
Yeah, go for it.
Up until the end of the debate, I was on the Tim train.
There's two Tims.
Well, I was on the Let There Be Light train. Because, okay, we'll get into the specifics, but I cannot stress enough how little Rebecca Clayfish and Tim Michaels actually said in this debate. They said nothing. Tim Ranthun actually went into some details like, oh yeah, let's talk about the details. Let's talk about funding and this and that. Let's talk about MPS and talk about here, there, and some nuances with that. He still said a lot of crazy Republican things. Like, I'm not going to deny any of that. But like for a majority of the debate, I'm like, he's actually saying things I can somewhat relate to as a person, not just a crazy ass Republican. So
I definitely disagree with you, by the way.
That's fine.
He came off as a lunatic to me. If you're
he looks like a
hardcore,
lunatic.
like America First Republican, he's your pick because he is that guy. The true believer. Yeah, the election was rigged. Alex Jones is a prophet. I have my entire house is full of my pillows right now. Like, that's your guy.
Of course it is. I'm saying just on the performances alone, like if you didn't know a single thing about any of these candidates going into this thing, because they didn't talk about the election until the end. And again, he looked like a crazy person still. He stared, and he also looked very nervous. Like you said, Rebecca Clayfish was by far the most polished candidate up there. But he actually talked with some bit of reason to him.
Yeah, but did you listen to what he said?
I did, and it was crazy. But he at least said things that I can almost agree with sometimes. And that was more than I can say about Tim Michaels and Rebecca Clayfish. So let's talk about what they actually want to do as governor.
I loved the opening with the $5.4 billion surplus.
Oh my God.
Which we only have because the legislature refuses to let our Democrat governor spend that money. The Tony Evers solution is to have a tax rebate going to people and to put the rest into education. And everyone's solution, mostly they just talked about how they wanted to get rid of taxes. And then I think two of the three also said that they would give it back to the people. Well, yeah, that's what Tony Evers wants to do too, and the legislature won't let him. So apparently they will if you're a Republican, just not if you're a Democrat, though. But yeah, it's all of them. They just went on rants about how they wanted to get rid of taxes. Tim Ranthun said that he wanted a flat tax.
I think they all said they wanted a flat tax, didn't they?
I think they all mentioned it at one point,
Yeah.
but he started off with flat tax, which we'll see. I think it was only Rebecca Clayfish that actually said what her tax rate would be.
Yeah, she did.
But he also said that he wanted to repeal state tax, which I assume he means state income tax.
Yeah.
Didn't say, just said state tax. So yeah, again, turn us into a red state where having no state tax, income tax, means your sales tax skyrockets, and it puts more pressure on people that aren't able to buy goods outside of the state. Mostly you're poor or lower class. So doesn't really do much to help them. Certainly helps the upper class more because they can just buy goods and things outside of the state, and then they don't have to pay any state income tax, which certainly helps them out quite a lot because their income is much higher. Tim Michaels, he was second to go, so kind of do it in that order. He didn't answer the question, which big surprise. He said he is going to, quote, do election reform.
Remember, we're talking about the surplus right now.
Right, this was the question about the surplus. He said he was going to do election reform, lower crime, and education reform, and said we spend too much money on education.
Yep.
Which is not true. Rebecca Clayfish, she blamed Joe Biden and Tony Evers for inflation and supply chain issues.
Thus, we should eliminate the state income tax.
Because of that, we should eliminate the state income tax.
I'm like, what? my favorite is that she also called it this Biden-inflation.
Yeah, Biden.
There were so many slogans they thought were just super clever. It was so cringy.
So her flat tax, she said, would be 3.54%. That is currently the income tax rate for those, I looked it up, for individuals making from $0 to $12,000, which would mean that there's no benefit to her flat tax for anyone who is at the lowest income rate in the state. So the poorest Wisconsinites would not benefit at all from basically giving the biggest tax break in the history of our state.
So who would actually benefit from that then?
Oh, of course, it would be the richest Wisconsinites who would reduce their tax rate by more than half. As it is currently, I think, like over 7%.
Yeah.
Their tax rate would reduce dramatically, whereas the poor would get nothing.
So, and
which is truly a Republican idea.
Right.
And she said to make up for that deficit in income for the state, that she would eliminate state agencies.
Yep.
So forget about the DNR.
Right.
I hope you don't care. Her, like, she's such a big outdoors person, and her husband hosts an outdoors radio show and stuff. Well, not gonna have to worry about that anymore.
Oh, Jason, that's not true.
Natural resources will be plundered.
We'll just privatize it all, man. Privatize everything.
So we're off to a wonderful start. I think I stopped at this point because I just couldn't handle.
This is your first stop of the week.
I was like, yeah, of course, just eliminate all taxes. That's fine. We'll still function as a government.
I think you literally texted me saying, like, Joe, I can't do this. What the hell?
It was rough. Accepting federal aid, right? They talked about the Medicare expansion. The state would automatically get $1.1 billion from the federal government if we would expand Medicare access.
How big? I think it was over 95 million Wisconsinites get on healthcare then?
Yeah, it would be tremendous for the state, especially for people that are in between right now.
Yep.
You know, they're not low enough income to qualify, but yet they can't afford insurance because they don't make enough money. Yep. Those would be the people that would benefit.
So it'd be really dumb to like not take that money, right?
So Tim Rantham, his response was he refuses to be beholden to the federal government by accepting the money. By and for the people.
Yeah. And I didn't understand that we are a government that is by and for the people, but you're killing your citizens. What are you doing? And the only thing I could think of when he was talking was that, oh my God, this guy's going to make us a new Texas. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, that's him. He belongs in that Texas GOP. Tim Michael's answer was that he would return any federal money if it means expanding social programs, and this is, I think, a direct quote.
I didn't see this note.
He would business the state agencies because he is businessman. And that got huge applause.
Oh, yeah.
That he would business the hell out of the state agencies. Has anyone ever worked for
a business?
Right. Like, they really think, well, businesses are so efficient. I don't know where any of these people have worked, but they're truly not.
No. Well, I mean, and this goes back to, I even think back to like Scott Walker and Ron Johnson's campaign ideas where they were trying to say, well, we're going to run Wisconsin like a business. And I mean, even Trump did that in 2016 too. It's nonsense, but it persuades people because like, well, yeah, businesses are successful, so I want my state to run like a business.
Yeah, except
that's not how states work.
And that's not really how businesses work either, honestly. And this kind of gets into the leadership question too, but I want it because every answer from Tim Michaels had something to do with, at the Michaels Corporation, I did this.
Yep.
The Michaels Corporation, I did this. I was an Army commander. Michaels Corporation, Army commander. Do you think he runs the Michaels Corporation based on what he was saying?
Maybe.
I would say definitely should get the idea that he is the president and CEO of the Michaels Corporation based on the answers he gave. It's the Michaels Corporation. He's Tim Michaels. But no, in fact, it was, big surprise, a business created by his father. And when his father died, the business moved to his mother. And then eventually, when his mother retired, it moved to his brother, Pat, who is currently the CEO and president of Michaels Corporation. And Tim and his other brother are vice presidents of the company.
Oh, man.
So he doesn't even run it. And he kept talking about every accomplishment. Oh, yeah, well, at Michael's corporation, we do this. At Michael's corporation, we do that. You don't even run it. And then I looked up, because he kept talking about this, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So, and it's even in his ads, there's video.
Oh, yeah, he's the cat. He was like the captain.
The commander. Of the... Okay.
I know.
I don't really want to take shots at military members,
I thought the same thing.
The Tomb of the Unknown Commander is in Arlington National Cemetery. It's inside the United States.
Oh.
And that is exactly the kind of post you would get if you're a rich kid.
I had the highest integrity when I led my platoon at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. You were a shift manager, man.
It's an extremely ceremonial position. It's like the guards outside of the in England, with the big hats
of the Queen's Palace,
with that are like little toy soldiers. It's that. And I looked up, like, what are the qualifications? What do you need to do this job? You're a park ranger. One of the big things you have to do is memorize where all the grave sites are in case anyone asks you where to find something. Your other duties include shooing people off of areas that they shouldn't be, like don't walk on the grass, don't come behind the rope. That's what you do as being on the duty to guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Because, again, you're inside of a cemetery inside of the United States.
He's putting his life on the line, man.
It's just a ceremonial position, and he keeps bringing it up.
He brought it up so many times.
Like, I'm sure you know how to iron your pants and shine your shoes. That's like one of the biggest qualifications.
Oh, man. I'm so happy that you thought the same thing, because I thought I was like being very disrespectful just even thinking that. I'm like, no, there's got to be something else to it. There's just got to be the idea that he's bragging this much about. There's got to be something I'm not understanding. And there just wasn't.
There isn't.
And I think at this point, this is where I started writing down, oh my God, give me something other than a really dumb slogan. Because also at this point, I think he started saying, I'm going to turn Madison upside down for like the 5th or 6th time.
Yeah, that's his campaign slogan.
And then we're going to get to Rebecca Clayfish now, where her response to that was, well, I'm going to turn Madison right side up because Tony Evers turned it upside down.
Yeah, the only thing everyone could agree on is that Tony Evers is the devil.
Yeah. Well,
and weak. I think they all use the term weak.
I'm just going to keep saying, their one-liners were so bad. It was so dumb. It was like just like a bunch of sheltered kids who tried to go to public school for the first time in their life, and they had no idea how to talk to anybody. Oh my God. It was ridiculous.
And on the question of, would you take that public funding, the federal money for Medicaid expansion? Rebecca, I think, rightfully pointed out that she was part of the administration that
refused it,
turned it down in the first place under Scott Walker. So she said she would not take the federal money, and she claimed there is no coverage gap in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah, that made me angry.
And she called it expanding welfare.
Yep. Well, actually, and not just like they specifically did not say healthcare in this debate. The moderator said healthcare, but they all said welfare over and over again.
So I looked at some of the numbers, the latest numbers from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, which are from 2019. 5.1% of Wisconsin residents have no health insurance. That is 288,000 people. Of those, 50,000 are under 18. 10% are in the poor or near poor income category. That's 177,000. 179,000 of those are, of the 288,000 that don't have health insurance, are employed full or part-time. So it's not that they're, just not working. People don't want to work these days, so that's why they don't have health insurance. The largest group of people that are working and don't have health insurance are self-employed full-time workers. 17.7%. So those are your small business owners.
Yeah.
Because health insurance, especially if you have your own company, you have no negotiating power with the insurance company.
We talked about literally, this is apparently the references episode, but we talked about it literally last week.
Yeah, one of my favorite episodes that we've done on healthcare and universal healthcare and why it's important. But here we are again. Like, this is Rebecca Clayfish telling you there is no coverage gap in Wisconsin, but 17.7% of small business, of people that are self-employed full-time,
which she'll say she's for all day long,
do not have health and have zero health insurance. Not that they're underinsured. I didn't even grab those numbers. numbers.
No
I just grabbed
insurance.
people that have no insurance currently.
Correct.
So she is wrong.
Well, and she also continued to say that people are not going back to stay on welfare as well.
Not going back to work.
Correct. And as far as I'm aware, as of June, Wisconsin has a 2.9% unemployment rate, one of the lowest it's ever been in state history. As a country, I think we're around like 3.2 to 3.5% unemployment rate as a country. And literally, the current healthcare expansion coverage that she's talking about, that's crazy, that's keeping people off of work, that's still from the pandemic. We're still covering people who are struggling from the pandemic. And she just says, screw those people. They're just lazy. They don't want to do
They
anything.
don't exist, according to her.
Well, right. Unsurprising, Rebecca Clayfish talked about her time with the Walker administration and talked about how she worked across the aisle.
yeah, the crowd was oddly silent during
Yeah.
that time.
Didn't say a single thing.
So that's the kind of talk that is going to lose her support. She sounded like Tony Evers. In fact,
She really did.
Republicans can't talk about working across the aisle, not with the crazy, radical, leftist, commie Democrats. And the crowd responded much like I would have expected. They were very uncomfortable while she was saying that. But that's got to be her lane, right? I mean, between Michaels and Rantham, there is no
There's
room
nothing. You can't run to the right.
to that side.
Right.
She's got to be. Well, I'm the sane moderate.
And even then, she was doing so poorly at it. Next up, we have jobs and talking about mostly the long-term challenges that healthcare workers are to get them back into work and staffing our health facilities, and how you can encourage young workers to come and stay in Wisconsin.
This is really where I don't get how
This was weird.
how you can appreciate Tim Rantham. His solution to fix the worker shortage in healthcare is to make sure that they don't have to wear surgical masks.
Nope.
And he called the COVID vaccination the Franken jab.
Yeah.
So that's your guy, huh? That's who you're supporting.
Hey, like he says, he's a Republican, not a Republicant.
So yes, the guy who doesn't want your doctor to have to wear a surgical mask in the hospital because masks are bad now. I wrote, God damn it, I want to move.
So in his
next
defense,
to this. And there was one weirdo in the audience that, like, he couldn't stop clapping and hooting when he said that.
I know, but in his defense, they all said something like that. Rebecca Clayfish also was like, we need to get rid of these mask mandates. We need to get rid of these vaccine mandates for
She did.
the
She said
workers.
that they need to eliminate all vaccine and mask mandates in the state. Like, so she doesn't have the ability to change what private businesses do, or she shouldn't, right? That's what happened to our choice. She has the ability to stop any state vaccine or mask mandates.
Right.
There aren't any.
Shocker.
And when she said that, I think she paused. She was expecting a big applause when she said, I'll get rid of all state mask and vaccine mandates.
But they all went for Tim Rantham, baby.
Well, the crowd was completely silent.
Yeah, because they already had their winner.
I think they understood that we don't have any. We're right now in a crowded auditorium or studio.
Right. We're not being told what to wear.
And no one's wearing a mask. And we're all jammed in here together, and there's a new variant of COVID that's running around, and nobody's checking vaccine cards, nobody's wearing masks. I don't know that taking the non-existent vaccine mandates away is really going to do anything, Rebecca. I think for some reason, even that crowd figured that one out, because they were you could hear her two daughters were in the crowd. They were clapping, but because they were the only ones clapping, like, it was way more noticeable that there were only two people cheering that. And that was fun.
So let's go to my favorite topic of the night, education. This is kind of where things got pretty off the rails compared to what we were already doing. We had started with Tim Rantham, who was on to say that he wanted a fact-based curriculum where he wanted to stay clear away from social and emotional learning, CRT, and the 1619 project, because those are really big in our schools. Well, SEL is, but not the other two.
Right. The things that we don't have any real curriculum based on.
Right.
He also said that he wanted to eliminate property taxes going to public schools.
Yeah.
I didn't say how that they would make up that funding.
See, now here's my thing, Jason. You ready? I think he didn't talk about how he was going to make that up. I think he's going like super woke progressive here. And he's like going, I want to eliminate all property tax funding for public schools because we need to completely invest in our schools at the state and federal level by accepting all this federal aid into the schools. And that's how we're going to fund our actual school system. So there's no school disparities anymore in the state. Boom.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it.
I'm sure that's exactly where he was going for.
And the thing is, property taxes don't go to the state.
No, they don't.
They go to the local governments.
Yes, they do.
And they account for about 90% of the revenue for local governments.
Right. Well, and that's where the vast majority of school funding even comes from. So,
Right.
I mean, the fact that he said, I want to eliminate property taxes, like you're eliminating all funding for schools.
Well, all funding for any local municipality, any local county government, like they would not function without property tax.
Right.
It's like a big fad right now among Republicans, and it's like their talking point is to say they want to eliminate property tax for homeowners so that you don't get kicked out of your house when you're, your elderly homeowner who is on a fixed income and your property tax is too high and you can't afford your house anymore, so you get kicked out. That's like the big thing. And really it's, of course, just for real estate speculators.
Well, and
that you don't have to pay. That's the thing that gets you to stop buying all that real estate everywhere is when the property tax is due. And, that's what hits you. So if you get rid of that, then all of these people that are buying up all this property everywhere and hoarding it, they don't have to worry about property tax anymore.
Right. Well, and again, I want to make it very clear that Republicans have repeatedly stopped state aid from going to dispersion of different schools. Even in the last biennial budget, Tony Evers put millions and millions of dollars into education disbursement all throughout the state of Wisconsin, and Republicans shot it down every single time. So the idea that they want to eliminate taxes for local schools, but also actually have no state funding either, again, they literally want to defund schools. I want to make that very clear.
And then Tim Michaels on education claimed that education is deteriorating under Tony Evers because, and this is one of your favorites, your little slogans, all they focus on is CRT and not the ABC.
Yeah. Oh.
He wants parents to be able to go to school boards and to teachers and to dictate to them what they can teach.
There was a lot of talk from all the candidates about transparency again. Basically just, like you said, crazy parents coming in and screaming at teachers until they do what they want.
Yes, he literally said that he wants them to be able to yell at the school boards and yell at the teachers about what they're teaching their kids. It's the worst hellish outcome that you can have. And as you have in the notes here, contrary to Michael's assertions, Wisconsin was 18th in the country in education under Scott Walker and is now 8th under Tony Evers.
Because shocker, when you have a state superintendent lead your government, he's going to tend to prioritize education.
Right. He's very pro-education. That is his main focus as the governor. That's his background. That's what he ran on.
Right.
And it's working. He also had kind of a snafu a bit, and I know later Rebecca was taking shots at him for it. He was asked 3 times
He was.
if DACA students should benefit from trade incentive programs that he has promoted for high school students. It's like one of his signature things is the guy whose family owns a construction company wants high schools to teach kids construction trades so that he can get some cheap labor right out of high school. Because he gave his really long answer about, how students shouldn't be getting these weird liberal arts degrees in like foreign languages.
Right. We need to prioritize the trades,
Instead, they need to learn how to run a cement truck. And then he was asked again the same question, well, would that go for docs? And then he basically gave the same answer, just shorter, and didn't say anything about that. And then they're literally, yes or no, would this benefit DACA students? And then his answer was, what? And then they had to explain, we're dreamers.
They had to go very slowly for him.
And then even then, he just didn't seem to understand what they were talking about and said he had to look into it before giving an answer.
Jesus Christ, man. And this guy wants to build a border wall. This guy wants to make sure that illegals have no education. Those are his words. I'm not just paraphrasing.
Which is why they asked him this question.
Right. And he came and talked to what DACA even is, for God's sakes. It's ridiculous, man. Then we had my favorite answer of the night. This was my favorite. How Rebecca Clayfish was asked how her education plan would ban inherent racism without hindering real-life conversations about race and gender. And she gave the best answer of the entire night for me. This was just great. Quote, "We all know that CRT and critical race feminism,"
which I'd never heard that term before. Critical race feminism
have become hot topics and buzzwords. No shit. You made the buzzwords. What are you talking about? It's your fault.
Yeah, she blamed the media. And I think it's the media that's been pushing this narrative.
She goes on.
Right-wing media, yes, I agree. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN.
She goes on to say, the fact that we're even debating what is a fact, what is objective, and what is subjective is comical. This seems to be something thrust onto the debate by the media. Fact is fact. Objective is objective. Subjective is subjective.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
What are you talking about?
Word is word. Bird is bird.
Like, my literal only thought is that she saw like that Incredibles meme where it's like math is math, like that meme, and she's like, oh, that's really funny. I'm gonna say that in the debate. Fact is fact. I'm gonna really get the liberals with that one.
Yeah, there are a lot of facts that you've already gotten wrong in this debate.
What? Fact is fact, objective is objective, and subjective is subjective. And then the crowd went crazy.
Yeah, they loved that.
I'm telling you, there is a hidden language in conservative circles that we do not understand. Because my God, I did not understand that line. She, again, like you said, she was trying to get like these big applause lines for her policy, and it was just silence. But when she said that subjective was subjective, oh man, bring on the crowd, let's go. And of course, no Republican conversation about education would be complete without a conversation about breaking up the Milwaukee public school system.
Yeah.
They spend so much time
this
on
idea
MPS.
Has been around forever, and Tim Rantham, as he said, he was part of a state legislature that proposed this bill that got vetoed by Tony Evers.
He did.
And they always say it's too big. The system's too big. It needs to be broken up. That's what they say.
Yep.
And what they mean is we need to split the metro Milwaukee area away from the suburbs.
Yes.
And as we've talked about many times, Milwaukee is one of, if not the most segregated cities in the United States, which means minority students are concentrated in the urban inner Milwaukee area. So breaking up MPS into multiple districts and separating the suburbs away from the metro Milwaukee area would just mean less funding for those schools and hurting those minority students who already have a hard time and increasing the funding for those suburban schools.
Well, that'd be one way of putting it, but it's even worse than that, because throughout this entire conversation, they were also saying that's why we need universal school choice.
Right. They also separately, all of them push for universal school choice.
So now here's the thing. First I gotta start with Tim Michaels, because when he was asked about breaking up MPS, he said, and I quote, "If MPS was a business, it would be bankrupt. We'll solve that with universal school choice to encourage competition."
So we'll give that money to
private schools,
Christian schools,
and somehow that's gonna make MPS better. See, and this is where I get really angry with this kind of rhetoric, because education is not a business. I used to believe in voucher schools like way back in the day. I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, you gotta have education, make sure parents have choice. The problem is you can't afford to have losers in the marketplace of education. In the marketplace of business and things like that, you will have losers. People will fail their businesses and they will go bankrupt. If a school goes bankrupt, all of those students lose out on school. They have to go somewhere or they don't go to school. And that's the problem with that. So what he's encouraging is literally bankrupting inner city Milwaukee schools to give more funding to suburban schools, like you said, Jason, as well as private Christian schools who do not accept these kids.
They don't accept kids with disabilities. They don't accept LGBT kids. They discriminate.
Yes, explicitly they discriminate. And again, another great line from Michaels. When asked, how would you make sure MPS succeeds after you break them up and give all their money to voucher schools, he says, it can't get any worse.
It will.
That was literally his only solution. He had nothing for MPS other than break it up, because he knows he doesn't give a rip about MPS. He doesn't care about Milwaukee students. He doesn't care about black children, brown children, anybody. And okay, again, yes, he was absolutely insane, Jason. But here's where Tim Rantham scored some points with me. So hear me out, okay?
He's already defunded all of the schools by getting rid of property taxes.
Hear me out. opposed to both Michaels and Clayfish. Rantham, who was apparently not ready to talk about MPS, he was like very off the cuff with it because he just like, I think I
Well, he's
was
from like a rural area.
So he had like very little idea what he was actually talking about, and it was very apparent. But during that, he was like, I can see why people would want to to split up MPS. There's a lot of good ideas because there's a lot of people there, which means there's a lot of oversight. The ratios are crazy, blah, blah, blah. But that also means if you split up into I think we decided like 4 districts or 4 different school districts or something like that, that means you're going to have 4 times the type of overhead you're going to have. You're going to have all those buying power significantly less for those students.
Well, and administration.
Costs go through the roof. And I'm like, wow, at least you acknowledged it. Again, my bar was super low, but even saying that made me very happy. Like, good job, Tim.
Well, and I think that comes again from being from a more rural area. They're always consolidating school districts to save money. So to him, the idea of breaking up a school district into smaller chunks is probably very alien.
But he also wasn't wrong with that either. That's right.
I mean, it's like, it's all true, but it's also incredibly racist. Because it's always, let's break the inner metro area away from the suburb.
100%. And I mean, he also did say, even with all that type of stuff, he's like, I still support breaking up MPS. So screw that. But I just wanted to say, like, he at least scored like some points with me for at least acknowledging the problems that Rebecca Clayfish and Tim Michaels were just not even engaging with at all. So kudos to you, Tim Bradford.
And nearing the end, let's talk about their stances on abortion.
Well, okay, I was kind of bored on this one. I mean, we knew what they were going to talk about even before going into this thing. I was not surprised by anything.
Right. So Tim Rantham definitely wants to make it clear he has the most extreme views on abortion. He said he's the only one that is backed by the Wisconsin Life organization.
Well, he started his statement with, and I quoted it here, all people are God's children. He was the most explicitly religious person up there.
Which they're all Jesus freaks.
I know, but he went for the super religious moniker there, though.
He said that life begins at conception.
He did.
I thought Tim Michaels, he seemed really nervous. He seemed nervous the entire time, but he seemed really nervous answering this question. He seemed to have the least kind of extreme views, or at least passionate. He used that
probably because he forced someone to have an abortion in
his
life.
I have that in the notes. He used that stupid line that, liberals are always trying to force people into having abortions. Like, his solution was to educate them about the other options that they have. And as I put down, I get the impression that he's paid for an abortion or two.
It really did sound like that.
He really, really, the way he didn't want to engage harshly, like either he's got a daughter, he's married, somebody that he knows has had an abortion.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I don't know that for a fact, that's my speculation, but the way he answered that question, and especially the extremes that everyone else was going to, and the fact that he definitely backed off on that question and was like, I just think that there's better options other than abortion. I think you could, adopt or do something else.
Right.
Was very like, wow, that's not as forceful as everyone else is being, and as much as he has been up to that point. And then Rebecca Clayfish's answer.
Hers made me the angriest. I mean, it's no worse than Ramthun's, but
it's pretty much like what we've been hearing from especially for some reason women, Republicans and conservatives. She said that she doesn't want to change the current pre-Civil War abortion law.
Yeah, she does want to change the 1849 law.
She claims that ectopic pregnancy and partial miscarriage treatments are not abortion,
which is false.
Completely false. And in fact, we had a story.
I was so angry when she said that.
A couple weeks ago here, right after that ban went into place in Wisconsin, where a woman was left to bleed for 10 days after a miscarriage because no doctor wanted to treat her, because it would be against state law, because it's an abortion. It's a medical term. It just means ending a pregnancy early. It's an early termination of a pregnancy that is not live birth.
Right.
Anything that falls into there is an abortion. And the fact that all of these conservative women can somehow say that, no, anytime the baby is dead or dying, and the mother is going to die as a result of that, that's not an abortion. But it is. And that's the problem, because it is legally.
Yes, literally.
So, yes, she gave the worst answer. It was the stupidest answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, again, just factually incorrect. The facts are facts. Objective is objective. Subjective is subjective. What she didn't say is abortion is abortion. I don't care how you feel about it. Legally, it's the same thing. So, yes, the things that she talked about that she said are not abortions are legally abortions and cannot be performed in the state of Wisconsin. So if you have an ectopic pregnancy or partial miscarriage, you are going to have to go out of the state to get the treatment for that. And it's horrible, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's exactly what our law says. But she doesn't want to change it, but also those aren't abortions. So she's just factually, objectively wrong. And then we'll end it up, if anyone is still listening to this, I can't imagine you would be. I didn't want to be when I was listening to it personally. We'll end it with the topic of the day, the thing that got the most cheers, election fraud.
Yep. So we start with Tim Ranthune because obviously he's the one that's the Stop the Steal candidate. Obviously I didn't care for any of what he said, but I loved how he just lost his mind here. Like, this was his moment, and he went crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they were behind podiums, but he definitely had an erection.
Oh my goodness. Like, he started talking about how he had all these documents that were great, and how, like, he has verifiable proof that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, and that we need to decertify the 2020 election. And then he takes a shot at Tim Michaels and Rebecca Clayfish and all the other Republicans, saying that, you know, like, a lot of my Republican colleagues say that we can't do this. And that's where he dropped my favorite line from him. I'm a Republican, not a Republicant. Good job, Tim Michaels.
And then he even asked, like, can I get 30 more seconds? Because he was so into it.
He did not just do that. He got cut off by the beep and got so angry he smashed his podium. And then literally his hair is sticking up. He's like, and just like, he stares down the monitor. Says, can I have 30 more seconds, please? And he said, and they say, no, you're a crazy person. It's like, come on.
They did actually what they did is they gave him a follow-up question is, okay, you said you have all this evidence. Can you provide the evidence? We'll give you 30 seconds to answer.
And his biggest piece of evidence was that the Wisconsin Supreme Court just ruled that ballot drop boxes are illegal to use in future elections. And his thought process was, well, because the Supreme Court thought that they were illegal to use, hundreds of thousands of ballots were fraudulently cast in the 2020 election. That was his big thing. And the crowd goes wild. Then, again, when things were starting to get really crazy, one of the moderators goes, just to clarify, that recent Wisconsin Supreme Court ruling said that Wisconsin ballot drop boxes are illegal to use in future elections, not that ballots cast via drop box were fraudulent. And
boo.
And they started, the entire crowd started booing the moderator. The moderator had to turn to the crowd and go, hey, I'm just reading what the Supreme Court said. Oh my goodness, they were crazy. So that was Tim Ranthune.
And that was his moment to shine. That's what he was waiting for the entire debate. That's the whole reason he was there.
And he botched it, man. He didn't do it. He screwed up.
Once again showed that there is no actual evidence.
No, not at all.
Tim Michaels, who had earlier said he wanted to do election reform, he did say that, you know, we need to spend money securing the election, but basically said that he wouldn't try to legislate or debate the 2020 election, that it's over, that by the time the new governor would be in office, we would already be in campaigning for the next presidential election, that the incoming governor of Wisconsin should focus on being the governor of Wisconsin and not litigate the election that was decided years ago. And that did not go well with the crowd.
Nope, not at all. Well, it went even worse for Rebecca Clayfish, who said that she saw no evidence of voter fraud in the 2020 election.
She said right away, like, no, I don't. And then also kept pushing conspiracy theories about the election right after that. I don't know if it was that she realized that that didn't go over well when she said no, she has no evidence. Because she said that she will purge voter rolls of dead voters and empty lots that have dozens of voters registered to that address, which doesn't exist.
Nope, not at all.
So she still tried to hedge her bets on that one after she kind of got pushed back at the start.
The crowd was not amused. So, and that wrapped up the very brief, very short, could totally have gone another hour.
You think it was short?
Republican gubernatorial debate. I have a couple of questions I just want to end
It
with.
reminded me of, the scene from The Princess Bride where he hooks him up to that machine that takes like years of his life away. It was like that.
So I want to start with one of your questions, Jason. Who the F is Adam Fisher?
Yeah, I have no idea. So they threw us a curveball at the end of the debate. They said, these are 3 of the 4 candidates that qualified for this debate. We'll hear from the other candidate at 10 or whatever during the news, I would guess. But it wasn't in the YouTube debate. So I never heard of this person before. So I don't know who he is. And he has no chance anyway. But yeah, so there's some guy named Adam Fisher who's also running. Good job, Adam. I'm sure your mom's proud of you. Hopefully you have just as much chance as the other 3 candidates in actually being the governor.
No kidding. So who do you think won the debate?
Well, I said in my mind, I think Rebecca Clayfish won. As far as who did I thought looked like an actual candidate for governor of the state.
Well, no, hey, I want to keep this so like as in like who do you think won the debate for the people of their camp? So try to put yourself in a MAGA shoes for a second.
Well, okay, so if you're again, like I said, if you're the extremist, if you're the vote was stolen, own the libs,
like the hardcore,
like you're a Ron
right-winger.
DeSantis
Yeah.
guy or a Trump guy, yeah, I think Ramthun did the best, because they had a choice between 2 people, Ramthun or Michaels, and Michaels did terribly.
Right.
So I think who benefited the most from the debate was probably Ramthun, but
agree.
he's so far behind anyway.
Oh yeah, he won't do anything. But I think, and I bet any money that Rebecca Clayfish is actually very happy with the outcome of that debate.
Right.
Because she doesn't care if she actually won. She wanted Michaels to make sure he lost, and he definitely did. So I think at the end of the day, you may have some people that will start going off of supporting Tim Michaels and start supporting Tim Ramthun, which she's more than happy for.
Right. That benefits her, and I think that she will win the nomination because of, if people are paying attention to this debate. That's the other thing. I don't know how many people actually watched it, who's paying attention to it, if it's being used. I don't really watch local TV enough to see ads or anything like that, so.
I doubt. I mean, I don't think this debate's going to do too much anyway, because the people who are going to watch this are the ones that are super engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see much coming from this debate. Who would you have had to vote for if you had to pick one?
I would, obviously, Rebecca Clayfish
I agree.
is the least
that's
crazy of the 3.
I think that's an easy one.
I think Tim Michaels came off as super fake, which he is. He's just trying to buy he's somebody who came in at the last minute.
He actually literally came off as another Trump. That's how he sounded all night long. He was just Trump. He was just making
But he did
stuff
with
up.
no charisma.
With no that's true. He was a non-charismatic Trump. I totally agree with that. And then what will we get if we have any of these win in 2022?
Me moving to another state.
I think I'll be right behind you, man. But legitimately, recap this whole thing. If any of these people win,
Our education system, our public
gone.
education system is
It's
gone.
gone.
It's replaced with a universal voucher system.
that's going to extremely benefit religious schools primarily.
And
Income equality will go through the roof.
right, so taxes will be completely eliminated, basically, for the wealthy. And
all sense of abortion's gone.
well, I mean, they are right now, so that'll just keep continuing.
But it
as
would get
normal.
even worse. That's the problem.
And forget about any election integrity.
Yeah, it's going to be really bad, you guys, but I don't recommend watching this for yourself. It was really bad to sit through. We'll put it in the show notes in case you want to torture yourself.
Well, I mean, if you listen to us describing it, maybe you can handle it, because I can't imagine our description of it really being any more entertaining than the debate itself. But if you did listen to the whole thing, thank you, Joe's mom. Thank you, Melanie, my wife. You are probably the only 2 that are still listening at this point.
Hooray!
We love you both.
And that's how we'll end it. Good night, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
The budget. Ugh.